Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. This is Mike.
And this is Gary.
And this is Daniel.
Daniel, do you have something in your mouth?
I might be chewing on some chocolate.
Unbelievable. Well, tonight...
There's just a giant pile over here on Gary's table.
Tonight we're actually going to address an email that we received.
I look forward to it.
This is a fantastic email. Daniel was kind enough to share it with us earlier today, so we've had a chance to...
And a very timely one.
Incredibly timely. This comes to us from Scott W. from Boston, Massachusetts. Scott shares his last name, but one of the traditions that we deal with in SAA is the tradition of anonymity, and so
which is one of the subjects of our...
That's exactly one of the topics that we're going to share tonight. One of the things we're going to address. And so Scott W. from Boston, I cannot thank you enough for the timeliness of this email, and we'll dovetail that into our own conversation that we've got stuff going on. Here's his email. Hey guys, I really love your show. Thanks.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you for sending us the email. We really appreciate it when you guys reach out to us.
He says it's helped me quite a bit in my own recovery. I have a question for you that I hope would be a good topic to talk about. How do I continue doing my step work and recovery while keeping my anonymity? The reason I ask this is because there are a couple of gentlemen in my 12-step group that live in my neighborhood, and we go to the same church. However, at this time, I'm not ready for everyone in my neighborhood to know that I am struggling with this addiction, nor do I want to get it around that I'm struggling with addiction at all. What are your guys' thoughts and advice? What a fantastic topic.
And there's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
There's a lot to sort through. So, start us off. Tell me what you think.
Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about why anonymity is a tradition in 12 steps and why it's important.
Yes.
Well, first of all, you need a safe place to start.
Exactly.
And that little, that's why we call ourselves by our first names in meetings.
Right.
We leave off the last name. That's one of the reasons why we do it here on the podcast.
Yes.
There's a level of anonymity.
Yeah.
You also need to realize that there's a lot more involved than just you.
Yes.
Right.
Not only have you got you, but you've got how your stuff is going to affect the intimate relationships of your life.
Right.
Those are things to consider. Also, and this might not be something that you'd think, once you get it out there that this is something you're dealing with, people will seek you out for help. Okay? So that's another thing, is that a lot of people don't. Sometimes you need the anonymity to protect yourself from being bombarded with all kinds of stuff. So
that you may be unprepared for.
That you may be unprepared
Yeah,
for.
I think that's true.
Okay. And then there's also a lot about, you want to keep it about, you don't want to make things about you or your ego or things like that.
Yeah. Right. I think there's a ton of stuff here.
For sure.
And I really, this couldn't have been more timely just because this happened to be a conversation that we were having even amongst ourselves this morning. And I will tell you, so I was challenged a little bit on my own, what I would consider to be my anonymous stand, if you will, and by my counselor, believe it or not. And it's caused me to think. And I want to draw the line between anonymity and hiding.
Sure.
Because I think that's relevant. Hiding is a part of addictive behavior. And an unwillingness to share, an unwillingness to open up, and living in fear is an addictive sort of behavior.
Right.
Anonymity, on the other hand, is an element of recovery. And I think that's significant. I think that's a big deal. Anonymity says that I'm not hiding my actions. I'm being anonymous as to who I am. That's a different stance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of a different stand. And so I understand what you're talking about here by wanting to not be completely understood by people that you may be going to church with. Now, but there's a couple things to unpack with all of that as well. just walk through the conversation of walking into church and seeing somebody that you saw at an SAA meeting. The reality of it is they're not going to come running to you and say, because I actually had this happen in my own church experience, believe it or not.
So have I, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was comforting to know that we could meet in that space, and as uncomfortable as it was for me that particular meeting, I can still remember the meeting. I actually sat next to him, on the pew, sitting next to him in this particular church meeting. And both of us looked at each other and smiled and said hello to each other, that sort of thing. But the great thing is they're dealing with the same struggle that you're dealing with. This isn't like AA, or this isn't like, obesity addiction or food addiction or anything like that. This, in those particular environments, it seems as you can post that on social media and everybody seems to want to support you and say congratulations.
Sure.
But it doesn't seem to be that way in sex addicts kind of stuff. And I wish it were different. I wish it was better understood, but we're not there as far as I'm concerned in the community.
Right.
And so I understand your concern and your desire to be anonymous. I really do. That makes complete sense to me. But I believe that as you work together with these people in your community, as you work together with these people in your own church, as you participate in your meetings and get to know all these people, that they're going to see you as an asset and as somebody who can really help them versus somebody they want to be, that you want to be afraid of. Those are some of the things that I think of immediately.
Well, and I know in the Sage groups, it's often brought up that we get to decide what gets to be put out there.
Yeah.
Definitely, we don't hide that from our spouse or our therapist, but those out in our community, our friends, our family, we get to decide how much of that information we give out to them based on how safe we feel with those people.
Sure.
So, keep that in mind. If these other gentlemen are in the same 12-step group as you, have a frank conversation with them. Like, hey, I'm a little concerned because, I know we know each other, but I don't want this getting out into the neighborhood. How have you dealt with that?
Chances are they have very similar feelings to you,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
have dealt with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they're about to.
Yeah.
They may be experiencing the same anxiety that you're experiencing.
And you might find that these guys are actually going to be some of your best support and resources in dealing with this. This
true.
is something that you might be able to start dealing with together. One of the great things that happened with the guys that I met in my church was that it was nice because when they would ask me how I was doing, it meant something different.
Right.
They were genuinely checking up on me and vice versa. But do you know what? None of them ever broadcast what was going on in my world.
That's correct.
And maybe this is a good time to lead into the next piece. There did come a time when I decided, you know what? I'm ready to drop a little bit of this anonymity because I think I can help.
Yes.
And so then I would start, I don't know what the right word is. Maybe teaching a class is not the right word, but we had kind of a class. And I said, hey, this is the subject, and, this is where I'm standing. And then, kind of put that out there and talked a little bit about my own story. And actually, I met a number of other people in the church congregation who came up to me afterward or later or things like that in different circumstances. And it opened the doors to a lot of really, really good 12-step work and helped people set, I became a resource. But that's what I meant when I said earlier that, when you drop that anonymity, you need to be prepared that stuff is going to come your way.
Yes, yes.
So that's something also to consider. The other thing that I want to throw out there is just because you're not ready now doesn't mean that you will always feel that way.
Correct.
And you don't have to put yourself out there like that. But I do think that you need to do a little bit of work on being willing to, because when you turn your life and your will over to God, He'll take you in places that you might not see where you're going. And as part of your 12-step work, we want to help the addict who's still suffering. That doesn't mean that you need to make a podcast. That doesn't mean that you need to go, have
A billboard
give
sign.
a lecture or a
Right.
billboard sign or anything like that. But you should be willing to keep what you have to share it.
Right.
So to a certain extent, you're going to have to share a little bit of it, but you have to become willing to do that first. I think almost all the steps have a willingness piece before an action piece.
Right.
And that takes time to develop too.
Yeah. I was just thinking, one of the greatest struggles I've had in terms of sponsoring or mentoring individuals is because so much of the SAA experience is based on this understanding of a higher power.
Uh-huh.
And the challenge that we often find is the definition of what that higher power may actually be.
Right.
What a great thing in Scott's universe to recognize that the people that he goes to church with are experiencing the same higher power moments that he is.
Yeah.
The same definition of a higher power. And so, we can take that negative that's been portrayed and actually see that as a positive as well. These people could be a tremendous source of guidance, direction, and help. The three of them, however many there are, collectively getting together, seeing the 12 steps as being, seeing them from literally the same perspective.
Yeah.
What a great opportunity that is.
Well, it definitely is. As I mentioned on the podcast before, my first meeting I went to, there was another gentleman there that I worked with.
Right.
And that became, and after that, we became really good friends. And we checked in with each other every day.
Yeah.
And that really helped me through my recovery. And so this might be an opportunity like that.
Right.
They're struggling with that. You see them at church. You see them in the neighborhood. That these might be resources that you can tap into on a day-to-day basis and not have to worry about. I gotta get to my next meeting this week. Instead, it's just like, hey, hon, I'm gonna go talk to John Smith.
Right.
And go talk with him for a little bit.
But the great thing about that too is that, again, coming from the same perspective, you're not trying to identify what this higher power is. The three of you are all sitting from the same perspective, saying we know what that is.
Yeah, that's
It's an equal playing
That's a
field.
nice place to be.
That's a great spot. Yeah.
Do you know what? I had another thought that I should probably mention. He says he worries about people in the neighborhood knowing what's going on. Can I just be really frank?
Sure.
I don't think people care.
I think that's a fair statement.
Now,
I mean, if it's affecting their lives, perhaps.
right.
Perhaps so, but-
the people who are going to pay attention are either the kind of people who need your help,
Yes.
okay, or
The exact opposite.
do you know I've stood in front of groups, hundreds of people, and I can't recall any, even in my own neighborhood, even in my own church group, my own community, my experience is that the feedback that I get are usually people seeking help or telling me how much appreciate what I've said.
Right.
If anybody's judged me harshly, they haven't said anything about it.
Correct.
Or things like that. And for the most part, I think people are wrapped up in their own lives so much that, like I said, they're not going to care really, So don't crazy make over that.
I think that's the key.
Don't let yourself slip into the trap that everybody in the neighborhood knows and they're all talking about you, because that's really not going to be the case.
And that's not helpful. That's
It's
not
not
helpful
healthy or
behavior.
helpful.
No.
And I would say if this is fueled by someone else, maybe that's time to talk about that in therapy. Because I know with my ex-wife, she overly cared about what do our neighbors
these
think?
people
What do our
think?
people in the
Yeah.
church think? When it's like, it's none of their business. They don't need to know.
Yeah.
But, she was so paranoid and worrying about that, it was something that was constantly on my mind. Then after the divorce, it was just like, it doesn't matter. If they're all worried, I'm just going to continue being me, and I'll just show that that's not, the version of me in their head is not the version of me that I'm putting out into the world.
Maybe wise to ask one of these people in his church group to be a sponsor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an opportunity to, instead of being in fear of what these people might be saying or what they might be thinking, perhaps if you see them at your SAA group or something like that maybe they'd be an ideal individual to be your sponsor, simply because same community, just a great person possibly to work with. And so I just, the anonymity piece, I just believe that most people experience this addiction in an anonymous way, because it's just not something we speak from the rooftops from.
The other thing is that this is not going to be the last time that you're going to have to deal with this on some level.
That's true. That's true.
Like I said, we were talking a little bit earlier about this being timely. That's because every time that we do something to progress the podcast, we have to have this kind of a discussion.
Right.
We had this kind of discussion when we decided to do the podcast.
Correct.
We had this discussion when we decided to branch out and start putting things on YouTube. The discussion was, do we want to start using cameras? Did we want to start, and these are all ongoing discussions and will continue to be ongoing discussions. If we get invited to go speak at a seminar or a conference or something like that, is that something that we're open to doing? Are we willing to do that? So as you go through your experience, understand that this is a bridge that you will cross time and time again, and each time you're going to have to assess that, and that's fine. Right now, and nothing I said, I don't want anything to minimize the feelings that you have.
Correct.
Correct. There's a reason that it is a founding principle of recovery.
Yes.
Okay. You need to be able to put that out when you're ready to do stuff. Right. And you have to go through the process of becoming willing to do that. And it might not look like what you think it is.
Yeah.
But reading your email, I look at this and I think you are a blessed guy. You got at least 2 people in your congregation who are going through the same thing that you're doing, and you all know each other from your 12-step group. That sounds like a fantastic resource. And if you'll talk to them frankly at your 12-step meeting, where it's
safe.
It's going to be a safe place, you guys can actually probably help each other through that. Yeah. And I promise you, I'm sure these guys are going to understand and are going to help you. And they're probably dealing with the same thing.
I think you're right. I think something else would be very helpful for you, Scott, as well, is take control of your own story. Mm-hmm. This is your addiction. This is your recovery, and it's your story to tell, not anybody else's to tell. And so what you're going to want to do is that you're going to want to spend some time probably putting together your first step and understanding your story thoroughly, because there is power in conveying your story and sharing your story.
Yeah.
And so having control and ownership of your story means that you're not in fear of it any longer. Mm-hmm. There's just a huge amount of burden that's lifted off somebody's shoulders by sharing their first step, and it's because it's the first time they've ever vocalized their story. And so the reason I think that's relevant in your particular case is that I think what happens then is that even if somebody were to share something about your story with somebody else, the fact of the matter is that now you understand your story thoroughly enough to say, yes, that's me. That's what happened in my life. That's where my experience came from, or no, that's completely incorrect. If you give me an opportunity, I'd like to tell you the true facts about what actually went on. Mm-hmm. But there's a tremendous amount of confidence that can be built in owning your story, and I think that's a big deal in his particular circumstances. As he tries to navigate this. I don't believe that these 2 people have any intention whatsoever of sharing something that would be inappropriate, but it'd sure be nice to have our arms around what is being said or what we think might be said.
Well, I mean, let's be honest and reasonable. They've seen you. If they were going to say something, you probably already know about it now.
Right. And they're probably not like to, because then they'd say, "Oh yeah, how did you know?"
Right. Yeah. Right. I know because I go to the meetings.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So. I just coming back to the idea of owning your story such that you're confident enough to address it when somebody says something to you, when somebody has questions. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal. So I think there are resources, the possibilities of getting together with these people, using one of them as a sponsor or a mentor. It'd be fun it'd be really interesting to see how long they've been dealing with this particular issue in their own lives.
Or even finding out if they're thinking and struggling with the same thing that he is.
Right. Yeah, all very good things.
Do you think we answered his question about how do I continue to do step work in recovering while keeping my anonymity? You keep going to your meetings for sure.
Yeah, I don't think at any point in time that you step away from something that's recovery based. Now, it may mean that you can change meetings.
Yeah. If you have to do that, for sure.
If you're feeling really uncomfortable with it, there's so many resources. There's so many places that you can go to for meetings. And so if you're feeling uncomfortable with that, but in all likelihood, I mean, that doesn't mean that you have to drive clear to the next town to find a meeting. I just think that, I in my mind anyway, I would reframe it as being an asset. These are people that can really help me.
I think so too. And I'll just reiterate this too. You've got to, when you surrender, when you turn that over, you've got to be prepared that it's going to take you places that you
Correct.
Yeah.
you can't imagine. And that's, in my experience, that's been a very good thing.
Right.
Sometimes a frightening thing, sometimes a difficult thing, but it's always been a
Yeah.
And one thing I would ask is this email or this worry coming from fear? I mean, we've been taught over and over that fear-based thinking avails us nothing. And I mean, that's really what this kind of sounds like is I'm worried, I'm fearful that they're going to out me or they're going to say something to the neighbors or and so on. When really this is an opportunity or a gift to create something better.
Yeah.
You know, who knows, you know, the three of you may bond and be able to build this this brotherhood, this community within your neighborhood. And you may find that there are others in your neighborhood that are struggling just as much. And you're going to be able to help them. And it's eventually going to become a positive.
Yeah, giving them a safe place to land.
Yeah.
Here'd be an interesting thing for you, but just because from our own experience, right? I mean, suppose you were able to get with these two other individuals and realize that you're not alone. The three of you are maybe the core of starting your own SAA group right within your own church community. Go to the pastor, go to the leader, go to whoever, and say, you know, we've got these particular issues. You know, what kind of recovery resources do you have here in the community or in the church, and could we start our own SAA group right here in our branch? Right here in
you never know where it's going to take you.
Exactly.
Now, you get to do all of that when you're ready.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's
but you never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah, that could be a tremendous asset, though. You know, to have three very strong core individuals who started their own group right in that community could be very, very powerful. So,
or you may start a podcast and start talking about this
there
stuff.
you go.
You could do that too.
Not to create competition, but I mean, that's kind of, you know, we're three separate individuals that kind of came together for a common goal.
Yeah.
And that may be the thing for you guys is you come together, you have this common goal of helping each other out, and then that slowly starts spreading out. And then next thing you know, you have a group that's meeting weekly, and you're leaning on each other, and your lives are getting better.
And then divides into another group. And those
Yeah.
groups are doing really well, and now they're starting to think about
The third.
dividing again.
A third or a fourth,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just think the key to anybody's recovery success is inclusion, not exclusion.
Yeah.
And I think anytime we start talking in terms of I need to pull back from this particular group because it's I'm afraid, we're making decisions based out of fear, and we are and that's contrary to recovery.
Yeah.
It just simply is. And so these introductions, these people that we're coming across are gifts. They're nothing more than a giant gift, an opportunity for us to expand and to move forward and to create support. And that's inclusion. And that's recovery based.
Yeah, and the opposite of addiction is connection. So,
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
connecting with these guys may be
Just
very
exactly
valuable.
what's valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right.
well, what a fantastic discussion. Thank you, Scott, for writing in. I hope that we've addressed your issue. If not, please feel free to reach out again. Follow us, by the way. I don't know that we've mentioned in our podcast, but we are.
Follow us on Facebook.
Follow us on Facebook. You can find our podcasts on social media platforms like YouTube, I believe
Yep,
it is.
YouTube and Facebook. So,
Yep.
12th Step Podcast.
Yeah, the 12 Step Podcast.
Not only that,
This is our
we should
100th
announce this is our 100th episode.
Our 100th episode.
Oh, my goodness.
So we have done 100 episodes at this point. We hope you've enjoyed all of them.
Unbelievable. It's
and
hard to believe that the three of us have been talking for 100 episodes.
Yeah,
It just
well,
blows my mind.
Well, I don't know that it's hard to imagine the three of us talking that much, but
That's a lot of talk.
But the really amazing thing that I've really enjoyed is the fact that, you know, we've done this for 2 years now. You know, we're going into the third year, and we've asked multiple times, and we've gotten a few requests now and then. But I mean, the last 5 episodes have all been from listener emails,
Yes.
which has been amazing, and because it gives us topics that you guys want to hear, and that's
great.
exciting.
That's exciting. So, Scott, I hope we addressed your topic.
thank you so much for reaching out to us.
Yes, we appreciate that.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to all of our listeners that continue to listen and
support us.
and not only that are sharing our podcast out to other people.
Yeah.
Because we've done no marketing, we've done nothing to get word of mouth out there. But I mean, that's literally, it's just people saying, "Hey, you should listen to this. You should listen to these guys. They'll help," which we appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. With that, this is Mike saying, do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery brings.
And this is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
All right. Well, and this is Daniel saying, find the humility in your recovery.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, or have any suggestions for future episodes, please contact us at 12steppodcast@gmail.com. That is 12th steppodcast@gmail.com. As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.